6,000 crosses stood beside the road, each carrying the body of a defeated rebel. Rome wanted every traveler to see what happened to people who challenged its power. But the man who began the rebellion was not displayed among them. His body was never clearly identified, and his final moments disappeared into dust and blood. His name was Spartacus, a slave trained to die for Roman entertainment. For 2 years, he turned frightened prisoners into an army that defeated Roman commanders. He did not own a city, a crown, or even his own legal identity. Yet powerful senators began to fear that he might march directly toward Rome. Was he only trying to escape, or did his dream become something much larger? The ancient writers disagree, and the rebels left no written history of their own. We know their enemies' version, but we rarely hear the silence behind it. This is the story of men and women who were treated as property, then chose resistance. It begins with chains, but it grows into one of Rome's most dangerous wars. Before the end, victory will seem possible, unity will break, and freedom will demand everything. And one unanswered question will remain. What did Spartacus truly want? As you listen, you can practice clear English through a true and dramatic story from history. The language will be simple, but the choices, battles, and emotions were painfully real. In the 1st century before Christ, Rome was already becoming the strongest power around the Mediterranean. Its armies conquered foreign lands, and its generals returned with gold, prisoners, and political glory. Many prisoners were sold in crowded markets and forced to work far from home. Some labored on farms, in mines, in houses, or on dangerous construction projects. Roman wealth depended heavily on people who had almost no protection under the law. A slave could be bought, punished, separated from family, or killed by an owner. Not every master was equally cruel, but the system itself denied basic freedom. Among the most famous slaves were gladiators, trained to fight before cheering crowds. Romans admired their courage while also treating their lives as a form of public entertainment. A skilled gladiator could become popular, but fame did not make him free. Behind the arena stood strict schools, locked doors, guards, weapons, and constant fear. One of these schools was in Capua, a rich city south of Rome. There, a small secret plan began to threaten the entire Roman Republic. Very little is certain about Spartacus before he entered the gladiator school. Ancient writers describe him as a Thracian from lands northeast of Greece. Some accounts suggest that he had military experience before becoming a slave. That possibility may explain how quickly he understood Roman movement, discipline, and weakness. But we should be careful, because later writers often shaped facts into dramatic stories. Spartacus may have served Rome, fought against Rome, or been captured during regional conflict. Whatever happened, he lost control of his own future and was sold as property. He was taken to the school of Lentulus Batiatus, where gladiators trained under harsh supervision. Each fighter learned how to entertain a crowd while surviving another day. They practiced with wooden weapons, repeated movements, and lived under constant observation. Besides Spartacus were men from different peoples, languages, and fighting traditions. Among them were Crassus and Oenomaus, who would become important rebel leaders. They were competitors in training, but captivity gave them a common enemy. Escape seemed nearly impossible, yet remaining meant injury, humiliation, and an early death. Then someone inside the school learned that a plan was being prepared. According to the ancient story, around 200 gladiators were involved in the original conspiracy. The plan was betrayed before they could gather all the weapons they needed. Most were stopped, but roughly 70 escaped before the guards fully understood what was happening. They seized kitchen knives, spits, and any tool that could become a weapon. These were not heroic swords from legend. They were objects taken in desperate seconds. Outside the school, the fugitives found wagons carrying real gladiatorial weapons. Suddenly, trained fighters who had fled almost unarmed possessed shields, blades, and armor. They moved away from Capua before local forces could surround them. Rome did not yet see an army. It saw escaped property that needed to be recovered. The fugitives climbed the slopes of Mount Vesuvius and built a rough camp. From that height, they could watch roads, farms, and approaching soldiers. They chose leaders, including Spartacus, Crassus, and Oenomas. Leadership among desperate men could not depend only on strength. They needed food, information, discipline, and a reason to remain together. Their first victory would decide whether the escape became a rebellion or ended in chains. Rome sent Gaius Claudius Glaber with a force to trap the rebels on Vesuvius. Glaber blocked the main path and waited for hunger to solve the problem. He believed the fugitives had nowhere else to go. But the mountain was covered with wild vines growing along its steep sides. The rebels cut the vines and twisted them into strong ropes and ladders. Under darkness, they climbed down a dangerous cliff that the Romans had left unguarded. Then they moved around the mountain and attacked Glaber's camp from behind. The surprise was complete, and the Roman force broke apart. For the rebels, the victory delivered more than weapons and supplies. It proved that Roman soldiers could be tricked, frightened, and defeated. News traveled through farms and towns across southern Italy. Enslaved workers began leaving estates to join the camp. Poor, free people may also have joined, hoping for food, revenge, or a different future. The small band grew rapidly, but growth created new dangers. Spartacus now had to turn a crowd of fugitives into something Rome would recognize as an army. New arrivals came from many regions and did not share one language or one purpose. Some wanted to return home, while others wanted revenge against owners and overseers. Many brought families, making the rebel movement more than a group of fighting men. Children, older people, and wounded followers moved beside warriors and supply animals. Spartacus organized training and used captured Roman equipment whenever possible. Blacksmiths reshaped farm tools into spears, blades, and simple defensive weapons. Scouts watched roads while raiding groups searched for grain, animals, and metal. Discipline was essential because uncontrolled violence could destroy local support and internal unity. Ancient accounts praise Spartacus for intelligence and a character greater than his legal condition. Yet those writers still viewed the rebellion through Roman eyes. We do not know the private arguments held beside rebel fires at night. We do know that Roman commanders continued to underestimate them. Publius Varinius advanced against the growing movement with divided forces. The rebels defeated his officers and captured symbols of Roman command. Soon, Spartacus was said to be riding a horse that once belonged to the Roman commander. Each Roman defeat changed the meaning of the conflict. What began as a police action now looked like a military emergency. Estates were attacked, storehouses opened, and more enslaved workers disappeared. Stories became larger as they moved toward Rome. Some citizens imagined their own household slaves joining the rebellion during the night. Fear spread because Roman society knew how many people lived under forced control. The rebels spent the winter preparing, training, and gathering supplies. By the next campaigning season, their numbers may have reached tens of thousands. Ancient estimates are uncertain and probably include non-combatants. Still, this was no longer a band hiding on a mountain. It was a moving population with fighters, families, animals, and captured equipment. Spartacus appears to have wanted to move north toward the Alps. Beyond the mountains, many rebels might separate and travel toward their homelands. But not everyone agreed that escape should be the final goal. A dangerous division was forming inside the rebel leadership. Crassus, a Gallic gladiator, separated from Spartacus with a large part of the force. The ancient sources do not clearly explain why the rebel army divided. Perhaps Crassus preferred continued fighting and raiding in southern Italy. Perhaps different peoples trusted leaders from their own communities. Perhaps the large movement simply became too difficult to feed as one body. Modern stories often present a clear argument between freedom and conquest. History gives us no surviving rebel testimony to confirm such a scene. What is certain is that separation made both groups easier to attack. Roman consuls entered the war with stronger armies and greater political pressure. Lucius Gellius moved against Crassus near Mount Garganus. Crassus and many of his followers were killed in the battle. For Spartacus, the loss removed a rival, a companion, and thousands of experienced fighters. He later forced captured Romans to fight in funeral games, according to some accounts. The act reversed the arena's cruel order, making Romans perform for former slaves. But grief also carried a warning. Rome was learning how to fight this war. Spartacus continued north, defeating Roman forces sent to block his movement. His army crossed rivers, plains, and mountain roads faster than Rome expected. Consular armies tried to trap him between separate columns. Instead, he attacked them before they could fully unite. Roman confidence collapsed again as trained legions failed against former slaves. Spartacus reached the northern part of Italy, close to the Alpine routes. At this moment, escape may have been nearer than at any other point. Beyond the Alps, the huge army could break into smaller groups and disappear. Yet the rebels did not leave Italy. They turned south, beginning one of the greatest mysteries of the revolt. Perhaps the mountain passes were too difficult for families and supplies. Perhaps many followers refused to abandon the wealth of Italy. Perhaps Spartacus had started to imagine a greater political or military victory. The sources disagree, and certainty is impossible. But by turning south, the rebels moved back toward the heart of Roman power. The rebel army marched down the Italian peninsula, and rumors reached the capital. Some ancient accounts suggest that Spartacus considered moving against Rome itself. Others describe escape, not conquest, as his central goal. Rome was protected by walls, citizens, and political importance, but fear does not follow careful logic. Senators remembered earlier invasions and understood the humiliation of repeated defeat. A slave army near Rome challenged more than military security. It challenged the belief that Roman social order was natural and permanent. Still, attacking the capital would have required siege tools and reliable supply lines. Spartacus had mobile fighters, but he did not control a stable state. His followers needed food each day, and their families slowed every march. Instead of entering Rome, the rebels moved again toward southern Italy. They continued defeating forces and collecting weapons. Roman leaders now needed someone rich enough to build an army and ruthless enough to restore fear. The command went to Marcus Licinius Crassus. Spartacus was about to face an enemy who could not afford another Roman humiliation. Crassus was among the richest men in Rome and deeply hungry for political glory. he received several legions and authority to end the rebellion. Unlike earlier commanders, he did not treat the enemy as a simple crowd. He understood that Spartacus used speed, surprise, and Roman mistakes. Crassus first had to rebuild discipline inside his own frightened army. When part of his force fled, he used an ancient punishment called decimation. Groups of soldiers were forced to select men who would be killed by their comrades. The punishment was brutal, and later details are debated, but its message was clear. Crassus wanted his soldiers to fear failure more than they feared Spartacus. Roman movement became slower, more careful, and more coordinated. Spartacus found fewer open roads and fewer careless camps. For the first time, the rebellion faced a commander prepared for a long campaign. The rebels moved into the far south of Italy, toward the narrow land of Bruttium. Across the sea lay Sicily, an island with a history of major slave revolts. Spartacus began planning a crossing that could transform the war. Spartacus contacted Cilician pirates and offered payment for ships. With transport, part of his army might cross the narrow water to Sicily. There, thousands of enslaved workers could possibly join a new uprising. The idea threatened to move the crisis beyond the Italian mainland. The pirates accepted gifts or promises, but they did not provide the expected ships. They sailed away, leaving the rebels trapped beside the sea. Whether they betrayed Spartacus or simply made an impossible agreement remains uncertain. Crassus saw his opportunity and ordered a massive defensive line across the peninsula. Roman soldiers dug a deep ditch and built a wall from coast to coast. The barrier stretched for many kilometers and cut the rebels away from food and escape. Winter pressure increased as supplies became harder to find. Spartacus tried negotiation, but Crassus believed time was now on Rome's side. The rebel army that once moved freely across Italy was confined in a shrinking space. Hunger could defeat what Roman swords had failed to destroy. Then a violent storm gave Spartacus one last chance. During a dark and stormy night, the rebels filled part of the ditch with earth and wood. Under rain and confusion, thousands crossed the Roman defenses. The escape shocked Crassus and threatened to erase months of careful work. Spartacus had broken another trap, but his army was weaker and less united. Some rebel groups separated again under leaders such as Gannicus and Castus. Crassus attacked isolated forces and destroyed many of them. Every division now carried a higher price than before. Meanwhile, another famous Roman general was returning from war in Spain. His name was Pompey, and the Senate ordered him toward the conflict. Roman forces also threatened from the east and south. Spartacus understood that several armies might soon surround him. He attempted talks with Crassus, but no acceptable peace emerged. The rebellion could no longer survive through movement alone. Spartacus decided to gather his remaining strength for a direct attack. The final battle would determine who received victory, glory, and the right to tell the story. Before the final clash, Spartacus was brought his horse. According to Plutarch, he killed the animal and declared that victory would bring many Roman horses. If he lost, he said, he would no longer need one. The scene may have been shaped for drama, but it captures the rebellion's final mood. There was no safe road behind them, and no friendly army ahead. Spartacus led his men toward Crassus in a desperate attempt to break the Roman center. Ancient accounts say he tried to reach Crassus personally during the fighting. He killed Roman soldiers in front of him, but could not reach the commander. Wounded in the leg, he continued fighting from the ground. Around him, rebel lines collapsed under disciplined Roman pressure. Many followers died where they stood, rather than return to slavery. Spartacus disappeared in the violence, and his body was never securely found. The man Rome feared left no tomb, no portrait, and no words written in his own voice. Only Roman victory reports remained to describe his final resistance. But even victory could not erase what the rebellion had revealed. After the battle, Roman forces captured thousands of surviving rebels. About 6,000 were crucified along the Appian Way between Capua and Rome. The Road of Crosses was punishment, warning, and political theater. Families may have searched the bodies without knowing whether their loved ones were there. Crassus had destroyed the main army, but Pompey captured fugitives escaping north. Pompey then claimed that he had ended the remaining routes of the war. The rivalry helped both men gain political power in Rome. The rebellion ended, but the leaders who defeated it moved closer to controlling the Republic. Spartacus did not abolish slavery, capture Rome, or create a new state. We also cannot prove that he planned a universal movement against slavery. Yet he showed that people treated as property could organize, learn, and defeat Roman armies. Later generations turned him into many different symbols: hero, revolutionary, warrior, and warning. Behind every symbol remains a real man whose deepest purpose is still unknown. Perhaps his greatest victory was not military, but the destruction of Roman certainty. Rome killed the rebellion, but it never fully silenced the name Spartacus.